I recently finished Major Jason P. Lowry's thesis, Soft War. Bitcoin has already blown my mind multiple times over, but Jason's thesis has taken that mind-blowing to a whole new level. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly why proof of work is so important, and I'm going to tell you what I think it could mean for the future. To begin, I have to lay the groundwork for what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to use the word real multiple times throughout this video, and when I say real, I mean it in this sense. This knife is real. If I were to stab this knife into my hand, I would bleed. I could only do that so many times before it caused major medical complications. On the other hand, I can tell you a story about driving that knife into my hand as many times as I want. I stabbed my hand again and again and again and again. And I'm not bleeding, I'm fine, as you can see. But I cannot take a real knife and stab it into my hand and not have a problem. There are real things and then there are not real things. We need to make that very, very clear. A computer is a real thing. It's made of circuitry, wires, plastic. Those are real things, much like this knife is real. But the stories a computer show us are not real. It might show us Doom 1 minute. It might show us an internet browser with Netflix the next. It might show us Excel spreadsheets. These are all stories that the computer can show us. They are not real things. Now, for the sake of argument, we're going to say that a computer requires 100 power. Doesn't really matter what that is, it's just 100 power. It can go from this story to 3 stories at the same time, and all it needs is 100 power. This computer, with only 100 power, can tell us an infinite number of stories. The right programmer can tell us whatever they want with that computer. Now, Bitcoin, on the other hand, does have energy requirements, very real energy requirements. A computer running the Bitcoin protocol, mining for Bitcoin with 100 energy, does not get you unlimited Bitcoin. Imagine for a second that this theater is the same as a computer. It is made of very real concrete, wood, stone, fabric, etc. The actors on that stage are real as well, but the stories they tell are not real. One night they might do a performance of Cats, the next they might do a performance of Wicked, and the next, Hamilton. Those are not real characters. They are being acted out. If the director wanted, he could come up with a performance where the actors switched from one sequence to the next, going from Cats, Hamilton, Wicked, Romeo and Juliet. There's no cost to make those switches. The actors can tell all manner of stories all night long, all week long, switching from one character to the next at no cost. The important thing to note here is that stories don't cost the storyteller anything meaningful. I could tell you that I'm as strong as Superman or have the detective skills of Batman. The only way that you're going to believe me is if I prove it by doing what I'm saying in reality. If I go over to a mountain and pick that up, then you'd go, oh, I guess his story was true. But if I can't actually do that in reality, then my story probably isn't true. This theater can produce an infinite number of stories, just like a computer can produce an infinite number of stories. Be it a director telling the actors to perform whatever story he wants, or a programmer using programming language to make a computer tell you whatever story he wants. The point here is there is no physical limitation, nothing real, stopping the storytelling from taking place. The difference with Bitcoin is that to tell the story of Bitcoin, it needs energy. Let's say you put 1,000 energy into the Bitcoin protocol. That'll get you 1 Bitcoin. If you put 10,000 energy into the protocol, it'll get you 2 Bitcoin. If you put 100,000 energy into it, it'll get you 5 Bitcoin. This is to say that the more energy you put into the Bitcoin protocol, the more Bitcoin you get. And that is the only way that you can get more Bitcoin. You could have, hands down, the best command of all the programming languages known to man, and it still is not going to change the amount of Bitcoin that you have. Something to note here is that energy is energy. It doesn't matter if it's coming from the sun, it doesn't matter if it's coming from coal, it doesn't matter if it's coming from a nuclear reactor. Energy is energy is energy. Now let's apply proof of work to the actors. When the director is telling them, I want you to dance, I want you to play this role, and they're just not doing anything. He's a really skilled director, he's a really skilled programmer, he's telling them, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. Okay, that's not working. Be Cats. Okay, that's not working. Do Tempest. Okay, that's not working. Romeo and Juliet. Okay, that's not working. Wicked. Nothing's working. The actors do nothing. I said dance. Nothing. Confused, the director tries 1,000 stories, but no matter what he says, the actors will not dance. Then, the director decides to give the actors sandwiches. He's got real food that he now brings to the actors. Every time the director wants the actors to dance, he has to feed them. It's the only way they will do anything. Once again, the actors are representing the computer hardware in this example. They are playing out the Bitcoin story. But the only way they will continue to tell that story, the only way they'll do anything with that story, is if they get sandwiches. They get energy. They have to have energy to do that story. This means the director's godlike power is moot. To get the actors to do anything at all, he must get real food and give it to them. Now, somebody said, what if a different director goes out and gets them steaks and gets them caviar and gets them fancy wines? That doesn't work for this analogy because energy is energy is energy. They're not going, oh, we'll do a better Bitcoin story if you give us this food and we'll do a worse story if you give us that food. It's just energy. The only way to get Bitcoin to do anything is to feed it real power. At this point, you might be saying, okay, so what? Who cares? What does it matter if the stories that somebody tells me aren't true? What does it matter if they can use the same amount of energy and tell me unlimited amounts of stories than somebody else over here that has to use real energy to tell me their stories? Why should I care? Some stories are obviously just that, stories. They're not meant to be taken as real. They're not meant to be seen as documentaries, retellings of things that are actually real. But some people are more skilled in storytelling than others. Some people are so skilled in the art of storytelling that they have convinced others to do whatever they want. They convince them that this is their territory, these are their belongings, and others have to do whatever the storyteller says. Oftentimes, this is fine. The storyteller says, this is what I want, these are my demands, this is the story I'm telling, and people just go along with it. But that doesn't always work. What happens in these cases is often described as war. War is fought when stories run into each other and people need to prove one thing or another. There are no lines that clearly state this belongs to this group, that belongs to that group. Borders are stories, but they are enforced by very real things. To enforce the water, we use ships that have aircraft on them, that fire missiles. They enforce the waterways. To enforce the air, we have an air force. To enforce the rules of the land, we have armies. And somewhat recently, to enforce the confines of space, we have a space force. You might notice this cyber section. There's nothing in there because, to my knowledge, before Major Jason P. Lowry showed up, there was no one talking about how to enforce cybersecurity with kinetic means, energy. I think an idea that a lot of people are getting hung up on is the term soft war. They see war and they think of kinetic warfare, fought with tanks and armies and air forces. As far as I can tell, won't go away. We will still need a way to enforce the rules of the land, the sea, the air, etc. Some way to go, this section of land, this section of water is mine. And somebody else says, no, it's not. And I say, yes, it is. Pew, pew, pew. And they go, all right, it is. We will still need to have walls to define, this is my house, this is where I sleep, and when the door is locked, you don't come in. And if you try to, problems will ensue. That will remain. Why would a nation state want control of this? What are they going to do with it? How does that look? Imagine for a moment that you could build a completely impenetrable wall. With this wall, nothing, literally nothing could come through it. What are you going to do with that wall? Well, you could put it around your country, and then nobody could come in. No friends, no adversaries, literally nothing. Once you have that wall, and nothing can come through it, what's the point of having anything on the other side of that wall? Anything on the inside of that wall is eventually going to wither and die. If truly nothing can come through that wall, then you're going to be cut off from everything that's outside of that wall. That means no trade, no friends, nothing can come in. That's a problem. This is why we have navies, air forces, space forces, armies, to determine who can come in and who doesn't get to come in. Friendly people, ships transporting goods and services that we want, they get to come in. Airplanes carrying passengers, going on vacations, they can come in. If you're a bad actor wanting to do harm to our country, do harm to our area, then we will say, no, you don't get to come in. Now, we've already determined that having a wall that lets nothing through is kind of a problem. It kind of defeats the purpose of having the wall at all because it's sort of this moot point. Let's say that you set up your gate around your computer to only let things in. Messages, tweets, emails, literally anything. The only way anything that can reach your computer is if they pay you 22 million Bitcoin. Nobody ever is going to get in. Now, this is a problem because we're back to the wall with no entry. So instead of 22 million, maybe you set it to something a little bit more reasonable that somebody could gain entry. You make it 1 Bitcoin. Now, anybody that pays you 1 Bitcoin can get entry. So let's say a company says, we want to send you an email, and you go, where's my Bitcoin to get me that email? They say, here you go. Here's a Bitcoin. We value you getting this information so much that we will pay you your 1 Bitcoin demand and then get you that email. And you go, well, it must be a really important email that you want to send to me. Okay, I'll take that. And you do. Now, part of this equation could be that because you enjoyed the email, you like the contents of that email, you return that Bitcoin to them. Thank you. This is a valid email. I appreciate that. Here you go. You can have that back. We're all good. Or maybe a portion of it, depending on the situation. If it was a family member, you might go, anytime Aunt Judy wants to send me an email, she has to pay me 1 Bitcoin. But anytime my brother wants to send me an email, he has to pay me 1.5 because I really don't like his emails. I really don't want him to send me an email. And so he goes, all right, I'm not sending you any more emails. But Aunt Judy, who we've got a great relationship with, she pays the 1 Bitcoin. She sends you the emails. You read the emails and you return that Bitcoin to her in full. And so you just have this open channel with her because you know her. It's verified. You know who that is. That person is unique and you've got an established relationship with her. Now imagine this at a larger scale. Let's say a bot farm wants to bombard you with spam emails. Well, if they have to all pay 1 Bitcoin to get you their emails, their junk spam, and you accept all of that Bitcoin, they're going to run out of the ability to send you junk email really, really fast, and you're going to be very, very rich. Now imagine the US in totality. All the actors, everybody in the US has 15 million Bitcoin flowing in circulation within the confines of the US. They can make their gates extremely expensive to get through. 1 Bitcoin per passage. That means that most people won't be able to pass through those gates. Russia might have 5 Bitcoin, and China 5 Bitcoin. For the sake of this, we'll say 1 Bitcoin is gone, making 20 in total circulation. The gates Russia and China set up could also be 1 Bitcoin, but that means that the US can get through them, no problem. So they might make their gates 2 Bitcoin. Well. Does the US want to pay 2 Bitcoin and reduce their holding of 15? Probably not, but maybe it would be worth it. Back to the Aunt Judy and brother example, sending emails, one having to pay a certain amount and the other having to pay another amount. This applies to the nation state level as well. This friendly ally could come through at a low cost or no cost. This other one, a belligerent actor, could come through at a very high cost, if at all. The reason nation states will want to have as much of this Bitcoin, bit power, as they can possibly have is because it will allow them to do the most things with that resource. Just as having more energy allows you to do more things with that energy, Bitcoin, BitPower, will allow you to do more things in the digital realm that requires that thing. And I believe that more and more things will require that as an entry fee. Children, people of all ages, think that they want free things, access to unfettered freedom, no walls, no barriers, just complete, unmitigated, no barriers, no boundaries. But nobody actually wants that. If I tell you to play the game, and you go, well, what's the game? And I go, it's whatever you want it to be. That's not very fun. But if I describe a game to you with very clear rules, let's call it chess, for example, that is way more fun than the do whatever you want game. The do whatever game could consist of throwing a ball in the water. It might be jump off a bridge. It could be put a pencil up your nose. It doesn't really matter because the do whatever game has no rules. The image that I've had in mind when reading this is that for the longest time we've been up here on our Mount Olympus looking down. We've been looking at all the stories that we can tell, all the things that we can manipulate, and we think that we have unlimited control over what we can do. And for the longest time, that's been true. We can say whatever we want. We can do whatever we want in these various realms. The written realm, the spoken realm, the digital realm. Bitcoin flips this on its head. It shows us that we're down here looking up at the rest of the universe, the totality of the entire universe. I feel like so many people are caught up in Bitcoin as a monetary protocol. And yes, it is that, and it might be that for many years to come. But the implications of what Bitcoin are so much bigger than just a monetary protocol. It makes something that wasn't real, the world of the digital, into something that now can have a base layer, a ground floor that is real. I think as time goes on, people will demand that their stories have something backing them that is real. And when I say stories, I mean all of the things that we encounter, all of the claims of any sort that are made online. I'm talking about every tweet, every ad, every movie, everything that you encounter. People will want it to be real, backed by energy. The digital world where things are not real, the ephemeral world, will just cease to be because it'll be so pointless to put any energy into that at all. The reason nation states will want to have a piece of this pie is because they'll want to have as much control of this thing as possible. The benefit here is that everyone will get cheaper and cheaper energy. I honestly don't know what the universal implications of this are. When I say universal, I mean universe. Nation states will get as much energy as they possibly can from their local environment, Earth, United States, Africa, whatever. When you have a world that is flourishing like Wakanda because there is so much abundant energy, then other sources will be sought out. By that point, we'll be traveling the stars looking for the cheapest, most efficient energy that you can possibly get your hands on. If I'm even remotely right on this, then having even the tiniest fraction of Bitcoin will be life-changing for your children's children. Maybe even you. There's honestly so much here that I can't really get it into a single concise video. I encourage you to reach out to me on Twitter if you want to talk about this. I would love to have conversations about it because there is so much here to pull apart. And honestly, I don't think I can do it on my own just talking out aloud. I think I need more people to talk to. So, by all means, reach out to me, leave a comment below, let me know where I've gone wrong. If I have, I want to know where there are holes in this idea. I want to know where I can fix it. But I think Bitcoin is kind of like math. And right now we're just so enamored with counting and how we can do calculations and not looking at the skyscrapers, the cathedrals, the bridges, the rocket ships that we can build. And if that's accurate, then the future is very, very bright indeed.